I hope everybody can hear me. Good morning. I know you all have great conversations. I hate to break into them, but it's time to start our service. I'm Julia Beckman. I will be the worship kind of leader today, and thank goodness for Jean Schaefer, who is helping with the technology, and our music is provided by Jamie Passman, our own Jamie Passman, and we welcome you all here today. And today we have a guest minister who will be with us on video. So we will be I hear some, oh dear, right? People really wanted to meet him in person, but it's kind of a long distance for him to travel, and he had some other things going on, so he very kindly recorded several bits of the service. So our opening words are actually recommended by him. They are by astrophysicist Joe Primack and cultural historian Nancy Ellen Abrams from their 2000 book, View from the Center of the Universe. And I quote, "Without a meaningful, believable story that explains the world we actually live in, people have no idea how to think about the big picture. And without a big picture, we are very small people." We move now to our chalice lighting, if Jean will help me. Thank you. And the lighting is also words that Reverend Dowd recommended. They are actually by his wife, who is also a researcher and theologian. "May the fire that has illumined the universe since the beginning," thank you, "and lit up the stars, ignite a flame of possibility in our hearts and minds today." Thank you. Please rise as you are able for our opening hymn, "For the Beauty of the Earth," page 21. Please be seated. It's so nice to hear all your voices singing a song that we all know. That makes a difference. Our guest speaker today, who will be with us via the wonders of technology, is the Reverend Michael Dowd. Since April 2002, Michael and his wife, who is UU science writer and fellow climate activist Connie Barlow, have traveled North America delivering talks in some 500 UU congregations, summer camps, and minister retreats, as well as for other religious and secular groups. I might add that he is watching us today from his home in Michigan. This pro-science, pro-future ministry was featured as the cover story of our national membership magazine, UU World, in the spring of 2006. They've also been featured in major media throughout the US and Canada, and Michael and Connie were honored as 2016 UU Religious Humanists of the Year at General Assembly in Columbus, Ohio. We welcome Michael Dowd, who will now present our story for all ages. He will be on video. If the kids would like to come forward and come closer to the screen, you certainly may, while he tells the story. I think you'll find it interesting. Glad to see the kids here. Thanks.
Do you want me to wait till you get closer? I'll wait till they come. I think if you just hit the arrow, it'll start playing automatically when you're ready.
Hit the up arrow.
The right
Side.
arrow, yeah.
It's not, yeah, you want to try it again? I know, lots of kids today, yay.
Good morning. So I would like to share a story for all ages based on the universe story, that each one of these beads signifies some significant event in the universe story, the whole 13.8 billion year history of the universe represented in beads. I've actually got a much longer version here. My granddaughter comes and plays with the doll, and that's my longer one, but this is a little easier to work with during a sermon. And the title of my story for all ages is You Are a Lot Older, Bigger, and Have a Much Weirder Family Than You Know. To say that we're older than we know, most of us, is that we actually have atoms in our bodies. Most of the atoms of our bodies are 13 billion years old. In other words, we are 70% hydrogen, or 70% water, and water is, of course, H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. And so we have a lot of hydrogen atoms, and they were all created 13 billion years ago at the beginning of the universe. So if I was, if I was hollow and you filled me up, I'd be about this much, about 70% water. It's amazing we don't slosh around when we walk. And you have that much water too. And so all the hydrogen atoms in the water are 13.8 billion years old. And so we are as old as the universe, at least the actual material part of our bodies is. So we're as old as the universe. We're as big as the universe because the universe, of course, has been expanding and becoming more complex. And we are that process becoming aware of itself. We grow out of the dynamics of nature, out of the dynamics of the universe, in the same way that apples grow out of an apple tree. We're organically related to the whole body. We are the story coming to learn its own story. We are the universe becoming conscious of itself, becoming aware of itself. And so we're intimately related to all life and all aspects of reality. We're as old as the universe, we're as big as the universe, and to say that we have a weirder family, well, in a very real way, this is our family tree. This is, you could say, these are our relatives. Indigenous peoples call it a kin-centric worldview, that as Daniel Wildcat says, we are surrounded by relatives, not resources. And Connie, my wife, did a program a few years ago at a Unitarian church and with children, and afterwards, this 8-year-old girl went running out to her mother in the parking lot and said, Mommy, I'm related to a duck-billed platypus. So we're older, we're bigger, and to say that we have a weirder family is not just that we're related to all other creatures, but one of my favorite quotes from Marlon Lavenar, he's the pastor of the largest Unitarian Universalist church in the country, actually, All Souls in Tulsa. And he said, we've all heard some fundamentalist-minded person say, don't tell me I'm related to monkeys. But now that we understand DNA and have cracked its code, we know that we're not just related to monkeys, we're related to zucchini. So let's get over it. So we're older, we're bigger, and we have a much weirder family than most of us have any idea. And I think that's pretty cool.
I don't like zucchini.
Really? I'd rather be related to watermelon myself or something cool like that. We really appreciate that story. We will now let our children go to the other building for their fun and games and good stuff, and we will sing you out as you go. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. As you go, rejoice, as you go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, So good to see so many kids here today. Since I do not have a list of announcements in front of me, I will refer you to the news and notes, since I have to admit I failed to print them off. We always have lots going on in our church through the week. Is there anyone here who needs to make an announcement about an activity coming up this week? And then once again, I refer you to news and notes because we have book groups, we have all kinds of things going on, so please do that. We now will move into the meditation time, which is also going to be led by Reverend Dowd. Should I push that?
As a meditation this morning, I invite you to, either with your eyes open or your eyes closed, to just calm yourself and notice your body. Notice the feeling of your body resting comfortably wherever you're sitting. And also notice your breathing. So what we're doing is we're shifting from thinking to noticing, because there are different brain functions. And when we notice two or more sensory stimuli at the same time, it silences that meaning-making voice part of our brain. So we start noticing rather than thinking. So you can notice what you hear, you can notice what you hear and what you feel, you can notice your body sitting there, you can notice your breathing. A lot of people find it easy to do that. But just notice two or more things at the same time, and I'm going to be silent before I return to the guided part of this meditation. And as you breathe, I invite you to reflect on the fact that with each in-breath, you're breathing in 1 with 20 zeros, that many atoms, and you're breathing out that many atoms. And the atoms and molecules that you breathe in with every in-breath were once a part of other creatures. They were a part of the body of life in its myriad forms. And of course, when you breathe out, the atoms and molecules that you breathe out go on to become part of other creatures. We interexist, we interbe, in Thich Nhat Hanh's famous words, simply by noticing our breathing and noticing generously, noticing with gratitude. The atoms of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen that you breathe in were literally created in stars. We know this is a fact. This is a scientific truth, that we are stardust, but also the atoms that we breathe were created inside red giant stars. In their generous dying, they give out, they explode, these red giants, and we breathe those atoms. So again, I'm going to be silent, but I'm just going to be silent for maybe 30 seconds or so. And I invite you to just notice your breathing and notice how grateful you can feel simply by noticing with gratitude and being present to life as it really is. Not as we wish it was, but as it really, truly is in this moment, right here, right now. And then when you're ready, slowly open your eyes if you've had them closed, and be present once again to this space, this room. Amen, aho, and blessed be.
We will now return to the Reverend Dowd for his readings and his sermon, which is titled, Living Fully in an Age of Endings, Practical Wisdom for Hard Times. So I think we can all relate to that. Sorry, I forgot the spirit of life. Let's do the spirit of life first.
Joys and concerns
Yeah.
after spirit of life.
Oh, yeah, we didn't have joys and concerns though, yeah. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Do in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of love, come to me, come to me. And we will now move to our joys and concerns. So we did the spirit of life first. If anyone has something weighing or dancing on your heart, something you'd like to share with us, please come forward now.
Good morning, everybody. So Thursday, the 29th, was my father Dennis's birthday. So everyone can wish him a happy birthday. Even though he used to tell his kids in school that only mortals have birthdays, but
I lit a candle for our darling granddaughter who moved to Florida from California in August, and she has survived her first and hopefully only hurricane very well. Thank you.
My name is Darren, and I lost my cat of 18 years about 3 weeks ago, so.
Hi, I'm Leo. I want to tell everybody that this past week, my wife, my daughter, and myself got COVID, so we're coming over that. Then my father, who lives in southwestern Florida, got sick this past Saturday or so, and he's in a Miami hospital. Luckily, he survived the hurricane. He's very, very lucky that he moved out of Fort Myers about 8 months ago or something. So I don't really know why he's in the hospital, but he's a workaholic. And we think that he probably spent a lot of time before the hurricane helping people board up their houses and stuff. And he probably got, very exhausted from that. He's 79 years old, so he should be retired by now.
And we light this candle for all the joys and concerns that you could not express to us, but know that you are supported. This candle for all of those people in Florida. Many of us have connections there, but it doesn't matter. We're all connected. So we do hope that they will survive and get through it all. Right there. And for all of those elected officials, we hope that they will remember whom they serve and who sent them to their offices. And remember, there's an election coming up. Now we're going to get to the readings and the message from the Reverend Michael Dowd.
Living fully in an age of endings. Practical wisdom for hard times. I have several readings. The first is from Joanna Macy, my great mentor, who's now 94 years old. There is science now to construct the story of the journey that we've made on this earth, the story that connects us with all beings. Right now, we need to remember that story, to harvest it and taste it, for we are in a hard time, and it is the knowledge of the bigger story that is going to carry us through. And also this quote, "This is a dark time, filled with suffering and uncertainty. Like living cells in a larger body, it is natural that we feel the trauma of our world. So don't be afraid of the anguish you feel, or the anger or fear, because these responses arise from the depth of your caring and the truth of your interconnectedness with all beings." I love this one also from Alice O'Keefe. "Even if we can't escape its consequences, it is not too late to escape the mindset that brought us here." And then New York Times bestselling indigenous author and plant scientist Robin Wall Kimmerer, her book Braiding Sweetgrass, I think, is still on the New York Times bestseller list. "To be native to a place, we must learn to speak its language. It's not just land that is broken, but more importantly, our relationship to land." So living in the age of endings, practical wisdom for hard times. Here was the description that I offered. "No one needs convincing that we live in hard times and in an age of endings. Even those with no understanding of the unstoppable nature of biospheric and civilizational contraction feel the stress. Just to read or watch propaganda formerly known as the news these days is a sobering or unsobering experience. How do we cope? How can we stay awe-inspired? And perhaps most importantly, how can we be a blessing to others who are confused, angry, depressed, or filled with fear, blame, or guilt?" So here's what I'll be covering in this short sermon. The big picture, why the great story, or epic of evolution, or universe story, why is it so inspiring and especially comforting in these challenging times? I have four things: identity, divinity, kin, and destiny. I'll take a very quick look at each of those. Acceptance, the key to sanity and what I'm calling post-doom, no gloom peace of mind is acceptance. And then attending to what matters most, sustaining joy and meaning in hard times. It turns out that the things that have given life joy and meaning throughout all of human history are still available to us today. Now, the first thing I need to talk about, though, is that a lot of you are going to wake up tomorrow morning thinking, "Michael Dowd is crazy. That can't possibly be true, what he's saying." And I encourage you to be okay with that, because denial is deeply instinctual for very good evolutionary reasons. Denial is the largely unconscious habit of thought, whereby we refuse to accept the reality of things that are bad or upsetting, or that challenge our worldview, our legacy, how we live, what is required of us, and or our feelings of self-worth or superiority. Denial is also the instinctual impulse to reject or discount information that calls into question our hopes, assumptions, or expectations about the future. I have denial instincts, you have denial instincts, everybody we know and loves has denial instincts, so we can have compassion for ourselves and each other. Stephen Jenkinson is a famous grief worker, and this quote talks about hope-free, what I'm calling sweet grief. grateful, loving sadness that is neither hopeful nor hopeless. Here's his quote. Grief requires us to know the time we're in. The great enemy of grief is hope. Hope is the four-letter word for people who are unwilling to know things for what they are. Our time requires us to be hope-free, to burn through the false choice of being hopeful or hopeless. They are two sides of the same con job. Grief is required to proceed. And then Joanna Macy famously said, the depth of your grief is the measure of your love. You wouldn't be feeling grief if you didn't love. And of course, grief isn't just a feeling. There are Elizabeth Kubler-Ross famous stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And then on the other side of acceptance, finding the gift, we find trust. When we truly accept what we've been grieving about or denying or angry about or whatever, there are benefits that are only possible with full acceptance. So this is what I'm calling doom, and this is post-doom. This is the realm of hope-free post-doom. And one of the other aspects of, on the other side of acceptance, is gallows humor. It's vital to have gallows humor in these really crazy and insane times. Here's a few examples. So according to your chart, you've been experiencing brief surges of hope followed by prolonged waves of dread. Please note, the post-apocalyptical fiction section has been moved to current affairs. I know you wrote this as a bleak vision of a dystopian future, but today we can sell it as a fond remembrance of the good old days. A few of us are going out after work to pretend it's not the end of the world if you want to join us. Coming back to a little bit more seriousness here. So to speak of identity, divinity, kin, and destiny, I really have to acknowledge what my own religious tradition is. I'm a religious naturalist. Connie, my wife, and I are both religious naturalists. We take nature to heart. We have no supernatural or otherworldly beliefs, but we freely use mythic language or religious language, language of praise, language of devotion, language of condemnation, but we do it in a this world realistic way. And so here's my, what I call eco-theo credo, because ecology is the heart of my theology, and that's really at the core of every indigenous tradition, which is what we today would call ecology, is at the heart of their lifeways, their religious lifeways. So here's my eco-theo credo. Reality is my God. Evidence is my scripture. The epic of evolution is my creation story. Ecology is my theology. Integrity is my spiritual path. And by integrity, I mean the practices and exercises that help me live in right relationship to reality. So reality is my God, evidence is my scripture. The epic of evolution is my creation story. Ecology is my theology. Integrity is my spiritual path. And evangelizing right relationship to reality is my mission. The RRR is because I can't, it won't fit. But evangelizing, that is sharing right relationship to reality as good news, as inspiration, even in the midst of chaos and collapse. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm using the word God in a very specific religious naturalist way. That's why I add the earth emoji, G, earth emoji, D. Because what I'm meaning by God is simply reality with a personality. It's a personification of reality. So what is reality telling us? How is reality telling it to us? That's what evidence is modern day scripture. So I'm not meaning a person outside reality. I'm meaning reality with a personality. And I love this quote from Philip K. Dick. Reality is that which when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. So that is my ultimate commitment. My ultimate allegiance is to reality. To speak of identity, Percy Shelley, way back in 1812, gave us a larger sense of our own identity. He said, I am the eye with which the universe beholds itself and knows it is divine. All indigenous cultures have known that the universe, what we call the universe, is divine. Carl Sagan famously said, we are the local embodiment of cosmos grown to self-awareness. We have begun to contemplate our origins, star stuff, pondering the stars. Brian Swim is a cosmologist who worked very closely with Thomas Berry. In fact, he now goes by Brian Thomas Swim. He says, 4 billion years ago, Earth was molten rock, and now it sings opera. And see, nobody put anything here. When the Bible speaks about God forming us from the dust of the ground and breathing into us the breath of life, that's a mythic or personification way of talking about the fact that we grow out of the dynamics of the planet itself. Earth is your larger body, your larger self. That's true for all of us. Think nesting dolls. We are in the middle. We're made up of smaller, creative, intelligent realities like our microbiome, and we are dependent upon larger, creative, intelligent realities that we don't exist without. And so Earth is our larger body. It's our larger self. This isn't so much a picture of a human being looking at the Earth, an astronaut. It's one of the first times that Earth became complex enough that a piece of itself could get off of itself and look back at itself. So from this perspective, what is a God's eye view of the world? We often think about it in a trivial human-centered way, like the view from above and outside it all. And I suggest, no, this is a God's eye view of the world. The view, the subjective view from within every set of eyes has got to be included in an understanding of how reality is seeing itself. I love this quote. The universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. The environment, after all, is not our surroundings. It is our biophysical creator, sustainer, and end. And Daniel Wildcat, a Native American elder, said, we live among relatives, not resources. Again, that's a kin-centric worldview. So to speak of destiny, what do I mean by destiny? There's only so many things about the big picture of the universe story that I can do in a little sermon. So, I've done all-day workshops on this. So I'm just picking a few things. But perhaps the most important for the current age of endings that we're in is that individuals die and species go extinct. This is true for all life forms other than some forms of bacteria. So basically, this is the case. Sooner or later, we all sit down to a banquet of consequences. That's the great reckoning. I believe it also can be the great homecoming. Humanity, the prodigal species, after squandering our inheritance, coming home to reality. And this is true even if we go extinct in the not too distant future, which is definitely a possibility. Connie and I, for many, many years, probably 15 years or more, did programs on the sacred necessity of impermanence, death, and extinctions. In fact, our main website is thegreatstory.org, and right there is the death programs. We've got all kinds of great stuff. In fact, my favorite of all is Tree Talks About Death, a children's story that Connie wrote. Please check that out. Now, coming back to our current predicament and why we are in the mess we are, and why I'm talking about something scary like extinctions, is that we are already 2 to 3 decades into abrupt, runaway, and exponentially accelerating climate mayhem. Abrupt climate change is like 10,000 years of climate change in half a human lifetime. It's out of our control, and we're already 2 to 3 decades into that. For example, this is what the best science says. Notice all the COPs, the Conference on the Parties, all of our agreements, our pledges, right, from 1990 on. Turns out that our summits, our agreements, our promises, and our pledges are worse than meaningless. And the reason that they're worse than meaningless is because they give us the illusion that we're making progress, when the actual opposite is the case. For example, in the 1960s, carbon parts per million was raising 0.9 parts per million per year. In the 1970s, 1.3 parts per million per year. In the 1980s and 90, 1.5 parts per million per year. In the 2000s, 2.0 parts per million per year. In the 2010s, 2.4, and we're already up to 2.6 parts per million per year. We're only at 2022 right now. And that's just CO2. When you add methane and nitrous oxide, we're already over 500 parts per million in what's called carbon dioxide equivalent, CO2 equivalent. So here's the painful fact that we all want to deny. None of us like this. This is repulsive. The stability of the biosphere has been in decline for centuries and in unstoppable collapse for decades. This great acceleration of technology and market-driven ecocide is an easily verifiable fact. The scientific evidence is overwhelming. In fact, all you have to do is Google great acceleration and you'll find all these charts. Evidence is also compelling that the vast majority of people will deny this, especially those still benefiting from the existing order, those legitimately concerned about the consequences of collapse, and those who fear that accepting reality means giving up. And yes, virtually all of us are in that paragraph. The history of more than 80 previous boom and bust, rise and fall, progress, regress societies clearly reveals how and why Homo colossus is destined for near-term extinction. Homo colossus, my mentor, William Catton, used for industrial humanity. So homocolossus is where each of us in industrial humanity uses 20 to 50 times the resources and exudes 20 to 50 times the waste of Homo sapiens. So homocolossus is destined for near-term human extinction. That may or may not mean the extinction of Homo sapiens. We don't know, but it's certainly a very realistic possibility. Paradoxically, collapse acceptance may be the only thing that can help us not make a bad situation catastrophically worse, and to help us live fully, fearlessly, and meaningfully, even at Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan is the end of the world as we know it. And somebody gave me a t-shirt with the earth and Teotihuacan. And, you know, when I meet somebody and they say, what is that? Typically I say, oh, Teotihuacan, it's a Native American term. It means things are spiraling down, probably going to get worse, but just find ways to be a blessing to others. You'll be okay. Collapse acceptance. So that's what I want to talk about now. Acceptance is the key to sanity and post-doom, no gloom peace of mind. Now, what do I mean by post-doom, no gloom? Well, on my post-doom website, I've got 3 definitions of doom and 3 definitions of post-doom that actually a whole bunch of us worked for over a year to get collective intelligence on these definitions. So if you can think of a way to improve them, please let me know. Doom is a normal feeling of disgust or dread upon realizing that technological progress and economic growth and development are the root of our predicament, not our way out. Doom is a name for the anxiety and fear called forth when living in a corrupt, dysfunctional civilization, causing a mass extinction. And doom is the midpoint between denial and regeneration, with or without us. Life will regenerate. That's what life does. That's what nature does. I call it compost theology. Post-doom is what opens up when we remember who we are and how we got here. That's the epic of evolution, or the universe story. That's the big picture. What opens up when we remember who we are and how we got here, accept the inevitable, honor our grief, and prioritize what is pro-future and soul-nourishing. Post-doom is a fierce and fearless reverence for life and expansive gratitude, even in the midst of abrupt climate mayhem and the runaway collapse of societal harmony, the health of the biosphere, and business as usual. And post-doom is living meaningfully, compassionately, and courageously, no matter what. My life is devoted to promoting post-doom, love and action. So acceptance is the key to sanity and a post-doom, no gloom peace of mind. I did a 25-minute video that I sometimes do Q&A sessions with churches after my sermon, like sometime in the next week they watch this video, and then those who are interested are on a Zoom call with me. So I'm happy to do that, or just have a conversation after this. But New Serenity Prayer, emotional support for climate anxiety and environmental dread. Because most of us have heard of the Serenity Prayer. It was penned by Reinhold Niebuhr in the 1960s, a Protestant theologian. God, Gaia, life, reality, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. But a lot of people don't know these next 2 lines. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. Accepting hardship as the pathway to peace? Yeah, that's post-doom. And I want to conclude with attending to what matters most, sustaining joy and meaning in hard times. 4 things. I invite you to come home to God, come home to life. Again, I'm not meaning anything otherworldly or supernatural. This means come home to life as it really is. Come home to reality. Come home to your true self. Practice generous noticing like we did in that meditation. Contra, that is, as opposed to stingy thinking. See, everything we listen to and everything we speak can be seen on a spectrum of either really generous or really stingy. And by generous, I mean kind, loving, forgiving. And stingy, I mean judgmental, critical, cynical, that sort of thing. And so every time you listen to something, you're somewhere on that spectrum. And every time you say something, you're somewhere on that spectrum. And every time you interpret something, you're either interpreting it more or less generously or more or less stingy. So coming home to God is to practice generously noticing and spending time outdoors, spending time offline, and more time with the living world in all of its divine diversity. I love this quote. from Thomas Berry, my great mentor. We are talking only to ourselves. We are not talking to the rivers. We are not listening to the wind and the climate. Most of the disasters that are happening now are a consequence of that spiritual deficit. So we can all practice listening to what life is telling us. Listen to your heart. That's where it comes, not in words. Healing and nurturing the relationships that have always mattered most. The relationships that matter most, nobody can tell you what those are. It's usually whoever you're sleeping with is the one that matters most. Whoever you're living with, the next ones, whoever in your family or closest friends or closest to you. So again, there's no one way to define the relationships that matter most, but it's usually those that you have the most interaction with or the most long-term, experience with. And we can all heal and nurture even relationships that were once close and now are sour or estranged. I remember hearing one time a teacher told me this, and it changed my life. He said, if you want magic to occur in any relationship where there used to be love, used to be affinity, used to be closeness, and now there's not for whatever reason, he said, here's how magic can occur. You communicate to them. It can be letter, phone call, in person, whatever. You communicate to them in a way that you give them credit for everything that did or does work in the relationship. You take full responsibility for everything that didn't or doesn't work in the relationship, and shut up and watch what happens. Tears are the usual result. I've never seen it fail. I've practiced it dozens of times and coached others to do it. So we can all heal and nurture the relationships that matter most. And it's usually as simply as saying, I'm sorry. Or if I could go back again, I'd do it differently. It's usually getting in the shoes of the other, seeing and feeling from their perspective, and then articulating it from there. Completing your life and legacy. This is the thing. We're living in such crazy times that anybody who just assumes that we're all going to be alive and fine 5 years from now or 10 years from now is out of touch with reality. We may be, but if you don't know that you could die and your loved ones, at least one or more of them, could die in the next year or two, you're not paying attention. So completing your life and legacy is living as if you had a terminal diagnosis. It's living as if you could die, or somebody in your life who you're close to could die in the next year or two. It's living with that kind of integrity, humility, generosity, care, kindness. I actually made a list of all the people I care about, and I've been just communicating to them, one or two a week, just expressing care. Those people that have been a blessing to me, I actually wrote down a separate list there, and I've been communicating gratitude. And in some cases, people that I haven't had a communication with in many years, just out of the blue, I write them a letter, nothing like a handwritten letter, or even a phone call or text or whatever. But usually when the voice can be carried, it's even better. And saying something like, I realize I'm thinking about my life, and I realize I don't ever think I thanked you for, and then you just mention what it is. You will make somebody's week. You will potentially make their month by communicating that kind of gratitude. And I could tell you stories for hours on that. And then regret. Again, there's nothing more powerful, even perhaps more powerful than gratitude, is communicating regret. It evidences humility and generosity and compassion and can transform relationships. So completing your life and legacy, expressing care, gratitude, and regret, and doing it consciously. That's a spiritual practice. And then loving service. Loving service is where joy and meaning have always been found throughout all of human history. What gives life meaning and joy, even in the midst of war, even in the midst of drought, even in the midst of famine, even in the midst of chaos. You can be grateful for having bread, even if it's your last meal. Wow, I get to eat this. To wake up each day, wow, I've got another day to live. I wonder if today will be the day I die. That's a spiritual practice that many people in religious traditions of different kinds, East and West, do. Having your mortality and our species' mortality as an ever-present advisor to help you live mesmerized by how gorgeous, how precious, how sacred, how meaningful life is, and don't take anything for granted. And when you serve, you look for others who have it more difficult than you. Look for your neighbors, your friends, your family, whoever it is. And you can find ways of being of service. A friend of mine is a pastor, actually he's a long-time retired pastor now. He bakes cookies and bread and drops it off to people anonymously. He just loves doing that. Just ways of being a blessing, of being a contribution, to being of service, to express kindness and care, to others, whether anonymously or not, it will give your life tremendous joy and meaning. I want to conclude with these 3 quotes. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, "Do not lose heart. We were made for these times." Kate Marvel, a climate scientist, "We need courage, not hope, to face climate change. Courage is the resolve to do well without the assurance of a happy ending." And then on a practical note, Chris Martinson, "Plant a garden, meet your neighbors, practice generosity, learn new skills, control what you can, and leave the rest." This is my main website. I've had 85 post-doom conversations, unbelievably inspiring. Resources, more resources than you'll have any idea what to do with: audio, video, text resources, and the most pastoral, that is the most practical and supportive videos, can be found on my discussion page. Thank you.
Some lovely music. Thank you, Jamie. That was lovely, as always. And now it is time to think about the future of this church in the middle of all we just heard about. And in order to do that, we need funds to support the church. So now is the time for us to collect some offering for the benefit of the church. Please say these offering words with me. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with the people around us, and with all the world. Thanks. We're keeping Jamie busy today. Please join us in our final hymn, Rise in Body or in Spirit. Wake Now My Senses, number 298 in the hymnal, and it's projected. Please be seated. And before we extinguish the chalice, I just wanted to reaffirm what the Reverend Dowd said. His website is full of all of the wonderful things he was talking about today, plus many others. And he would make himself available to us for a 2-hour session, sort of a talk back. So we can set that up for within the next 2 weeks. He was pretty free this week, so we can let you know. And we can give everyone the Zoom link, either his or the church's, if you're interested in following up. A lot of what he said was pretty deep. I'm glad that he wound up with a positive message right after the doom. I think that was good. I was beginning to think, what? Is there nothing beyond that? So keep that in mind, and we can let you know if that's going to be happening. And now please say these closing words with us as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, or the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. Go in peace. And the benediction is from the Reverend Dowd.
May we leave this place, whether you are there in person in the sanctuary or via Zoom or YouTube video, but may we leave this virtual space and this physical space embodying the very best of the liberal tradition, the very best of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, celebrating our differences and being a blessing to all those with whom we come into contact in a way that's also a blessing to the future. Amen, aho, and blessed be.
Thank you very much. Closing music we already had.
You want me to? No. You can go. So